Who else was on there? So,
There was iRobot. That was a big one. Bed Bath and Beyond was another big one. And Tanger Outlets, the outlet shopping company.
okay.
Those are three very heavily shorted stocks that really were going all over the place. They're all companies that really have been hit hard in the past few years that people were betting against for good reason. Like GameStop, the big one. I mean, people just aren't buying video games in stores anymore. When you think of what are the other big ones? AMC, people aren't going to the movies right now, and that company's running out of money fast. Bed Bath and Beyond, brick and mortar retailer. Tanger Outlets, brick and mortar retailer. This is a weird situation because of the whole Reddit element to it. But I mean, it's still a pretty textbook short squeeze. A short squeeze has three basic elements. Number one, a bunch of big investors bet against the stock by opening short positions or using options or things like that. And usually, like I said, it's for a good reason. No one's buying video games anymore in stores, things like that. So there's a legitimate reason these big investors are betting against the stock. Then something happens, whether it's good news, like in AMC's case, they announced that they weren't going to go bankrupt. Good news. So, or a Reddit thread comes together and people want to buy the stock, but something happens that makes the stock prices go up. What happens then is the short sellers, the big hedge funds in this case, start to lose money. They are either forced to raise more capital or to close out their positions at a loss. To close out a short position involves buying more stock. So it's a supply and demand problem where these Reddit investors are buying GameStop and AMC hand over fist. Then these hedge funds have to close out their short positions and buy even more. And there's just not enough shares to buy. So it drives the price up and up. And with a stock like GameStop or AMC or Bed Bath and Beyond that's just been shorted to death, there's just so many investors that have to close out their short positions that it creates this kind of snowball effect. And it's never been as extreme as the millions of investors in this Reddit group have made it. But that's the basic idea is it just kind of creates a snowball effect that the price goes up and up and up. It has nothing to do fundamentally with the business. And it could be a really interesting market dynamic. I think this has been the most interesting short squeeze I've ever seen, but it's definitely not the first one.
Okay. Oh, this happened before?
A good example I want to say it was 2018, Tilray, when the marijuana stock boom started.
Okay.
Tilray was a big short squeeze in 2018. I want to say it shot up, it tripled or quadrupled in just a day or two, and then came crashing right back down to earth. That one was a big short squeeze that happened not long ago, but not to this extent. I mean, it was a real business. It wasn't, really like Left for Dead like GameStop was or any of those. But this has happened before. It's a common phenomenon, but it's normally news based. Like I said, AMC said they're not going to go bankrupt. GameStop, there was no real news other than the fact that it was a heavily shorted stock that was being talked about on Reddit.
The people in the Reddit group, they were like, let's get these hedge funds. Let's stick it to them. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? So is that what you're seeing and hearing as well?
It's showing the power of these smaller investors these days. It really started with apps like Robinhood. That's what always gets the blame for it. But it's not just Robinhood. Now no one in the industry is charging commissions. So it's free to trade stocks for the first time in history, which is why this is really available. So you get all these investors who have, a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s to invest. But if they all buy a stock in unison, that's, several billions of dollars of capital that can flow into a stock. And that really has the power to move the market. So what the Reddit threads seem to have done is really just coordinated all these smaller investors together, and combined, they have more power than the hedge funds do. And I think they just proved that.
So it sounds like it's a financial coup.
It's definitely kind of a rebellion of sorts against the big hedge funds who have, shorted stocks like this before and driven the prices down and really created issues for for smaller investors and companies behind it. And it's really interesting the dynamic of when you see like experts and celebrities and big investors, how they feel about this. A lot of them are cheering on the small investors. A lot of them are saying this needs to be stopped. These investors are going to lose their money. So it's a really kind of interesting it's a civil war going on in the investment community over this. It's definitely an organized movement like that. It's definitely the little guys rebelling against the big guys. But this time, I really think they're really doing what they intended to do. I mean, GameStop went from about 250 a share to over 400 today at one point because of a Reddit thread. No one had to go anywhere. Nobody had to stand outside with, the signs or anything like that. From their own living rooms, this
Right,
group of small investors took on the hedge fund industry and won.
right.
I mean, that's a game changer. I think the implications of this are really kind of going to last for a long time.
I also read that that the Reddit community, they spotted quite a few flaws in some of the hedge funds investment strategies. What are your thoughts on that?
GameStop had more shares sold short than there were shares that exist to trade.
Mhm.
That's a pretty big flaw in the overall dynamic of the market. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. That's really why you're seeing GameStop get the biggest effect out of this.
Mhm.
They call that short interest. 140% of the shares that are available to trade were sold short in GameStop. In some of these other names like AMC and Tanger Outlets I mentioned, it was about 50%.
Right. What do you think is going to happen after this?
Well, like I said, none of this fundamentally changes the business. AMC is a unique case, but the other ones I think are definitely going to come crashing back down pretty quickly. AMC took advantage and sold new shares to the public at these higher prices to raise some capital, which was smart. I think the other companies are insane for not doing that. But generally, after a short squeeze, like I said, look at the 2018 Tilray example, where the shares just really come crashing down to earth afterwards. And the investors who get in at the top usually lose money in short squeezes. It's going to be
Mm,
interesting to see
yeah.
just how much staying power this Reddit movement has. Yeah, they're definitely waking up these sleeping stocks.
Do you think it will happen again?
Well, yeah, I'm curious to see what the fallout will be from this. If Reddit restricts that kind of stuff, or if they put safeguards in place, like when a stock goes up by a certain amount, it's done for the day.
Mm,
And I'm curious to see if there's any legal implications for the leaders of the Reddit movement,
right.
because stock manipulation is a crime.
Mhm.
So if it's found that any of the Reddit parties were openly manipulating a stock, intentionally manipulating a stock, then there could be legal repercussions. So I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out.
And that's a federal crime, right?
It is, and it's really, but it's one that's really tough to prove to for individuals. I mean, people who have like an investment platform like me are really scrutinized when it comes to stock manipulation and stuff like that. But just like Joe investor at home with $1,000 in a trading account, it's really hard to prove that they were successfully manipulating a stock.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to see how that goes.
Well, I'll be watching right there with you, Matt. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Sure,
it.
hopefully that was helpful.